Hey everyone, this is a live stream about technology thought leadership. It's about if you're working in technology right now and you're interested in learning the skills to become a technology thought leader. That's what we're talking about today. And it's a theme of this YouTube channel. And if you like to learn more, the best thing to do is to read the white paper that I'm writing. I've written a bunch of it. I keep adding to it. I put a link in the chat here, and I'll put a link in the description for this stream. And let me start by just talking about what we mean by technology thought leadership, because it's probably not really what you think. Okay. So, like I said, this is for somebody who's working in technology. Okay. Or maybe you're just starting your career. Maybe you're established in your career. It doesn't really matter. Maybe you've gotten the education for it and you're working on getting your first job. It really applies no matter where you are at the beginning of your career, at the end, anywhere in between. Okay. The benefits you get to it may be different depending on where you are, but actually what you're doing, it doesn't really matter. So it's the you're doing the same kinds of things. And really, what do I mean by becoming a technology thought leader? Okay. Well, really, what you're doing is you're making a decision that you're going to be creating content and teaching and giving out what you putting out there, what you know, what your expertise is. Okay. So this live stream that I'm doing right now is an example of creating content, right? Content is a very abstract term. Some examples of content are if you write a blog post, I mean, that's content, right? And if you record a video, like a normal video that you would record, you'd edit it, then you upload it. That's another form of content. If you do some kind of channel where they just hear your voice, that's content. This live stream is a different kind of video content. Okay. And when you're creating content, what's going on? Well, you're looking at the other side of it. Someone's consuming content. Okay. Again, that's a very abstract description. What is consuming? Who actually consumes content, right? So, what we mean when we use that word consuming, as in consuming content, basically, like concretely, someone is reading or listening or watching what you've produced. Okay. And so, when you're creating content, you're creating something that someone can read or watch or listen to. Okay. This is what a technology thought leader does. And it's the difference between a technology thought leader versus someone who works in technology. Okay. So that's the difference. Okay. The prerequisite is that you have the skills to work in technology. Okay. Or work in technology, but maybe you're between jobs, but you're qualified to do technology work. Okay. And so that's the prerequisite. Once you do that, then you make a decision that you're going to learn the communication skills and content creation skills, and you're adding that to your technical skills. That's the distinction. Okay. Okay. So, what are those skills? In a word, communication, but there's a lot we can do to elaborate on that. Okay. What kind of communication? Okay. And it's kind of interesting because the things we learn and the things we know how to do and the qualities we have in our mind and in our temperament, etc., that allow us to be good technology professionals. There's a lot of precision in that, right? Engineering requires precision. It requires great precision in thought, in specificity of the systems you're building and the details. This is all really important. You have to have that. If you don't have that, then bad things happen. Or if you're building a bridge, you need great precision in everything about it, from its design, even the equations that are underlying its design, in the implementation, meaning actually how the bridge is built. A lot of precision is needed in that. And if that is lacking in any regard, the bridge can collapse. People die, right? In software, if you're building software, there's, often less dire consequences for things going wrong and that people don't die. But really bad things can happen, right? When you're writing payroll software, you need precision so that all of the decimal points are in the right places in people's paychecks, right? Lots of precision is required to be a good engineer. And when we're writing, it's interesting because we need to operate in natural languages, and we need to operate in terms of the architecture of the human mind and how they process incoming information, right? So that means that we want to, and then the other constraint is, just time. People are busy, right? So we need to convey information in a time efficient way, in a way that's engaging. There's a lot of requirements for our communication and the content that we're creating, as writing, as video, whatever it is. Also public speaking, like, meaning when I say that, I mean in person, right? Because then there's another set of factors. And a lot of these are not necessarily fully compatible with the tremendous exacting precision that is always required when we're doing actual engineering work. Okay, so one reason that people who work in technology are often not as good communicators as people who work in sales and marketing, for example. Okay, why is it that the many people who work in technology have often, not always, but often enough, that they'll have special challenges in their communication? Well, it comes down largely to this in many cases. Okay, that we are working in technology in terms of dealing with this great precision that is not negotiable. And then when we're actually communicating with people, we have to operate in a different way. Okay, where natural languages like English, it's interesting that they very deliberately have non-precision encoded in the concepts of the language, right? So there's a lot of challenges here, and when we especially with something like public speaking, we want to speak in a way that the whole audience can relate to, and that's where non-precision can be useful, because I can talk about a concept like maintainability, and imagine I'm talking to a audience of dozens or hundreds of software engineers, and I talk about maintainability. Well, what does that look like in exact practice? Well, somebody may have in the audience may have a certain idea of what maintainability means and it doesn't mean, right? In terms as a quality of the software you're creating. And they'll do things, they may think like, well, key part of it is having everything being really readable, all the identifiers. Another person says comments are really important, right? We have to have lots of comments. If we don't have lots of comments in the code, it's very unmaintainable. Somebody else may have an almost opposite belief of, I don't want my code cluttered with comments. I want the code, put in comments where it's necessary and where it's useful, but by default, don't comment much, because that just clutters the code and comments can get out of sync. So lots of comments make the code less maintainable. That person may think that. Okay, who's right? Well, it's kind of the wrong question to ask, right? Because there's pros and cons to each one of these viewpoints, and they all have more or less validity in different situations. And so, but you don't want to have to navigate all of that when you're public speaking, or even if you're writing an article that you want a lot of people to read and then kind of nod along with. So that's why there's this imprecision in the language when we're speaking, and we say maintainability is good, and this person with definition one is nodding along saying yes, maintainability is good. This person is saying yes, maintainability is good. This person is saying yes, maintainability is good, and they have different definitions. And if they try to talk with precision about those definitions, they might argue very strenuously, but that never comes up. Okay, so because we're deliberately using imprecision in our communication so they can fill in the blanks with whatever details are needed for them to benefit from what we're saying, and come into alignment with where we're leading them. Okay, which is another quality of a thought leader, right? Leadership. It's right in the name. Okay. When we work in technical role, very often we can say, we can really just operate in a little bit of a silo, and there's a comfort to that. We don't have to think about anything outside of the specific task or system that we're doing, the system that we're operating on and building and that we're responsible for. And there's lots else, and we don't have to worry about that, right? We don't have to think about that. All we have to do is just focus on the task at hand, and that's easy, right? And often the requirements are given to us. We often have some decisions about what we're doing, how to implement it, what requirements to prioritize, right? But most of us, unless we're at like the CTO level or something, we're going to be given some requirements and say, here's the directional broad requirements, at least, or maybe more precisely given to us than that, and we just make it happen, right? Okay. So when you become a technology thought leader, there is something that requires a decision that can be intimidating, and that's why but it's necessary, meaning that the industry needs people with the courage to do this, which you're going to decide to lead people. Okay. Meaning tell them what those requirements are, what's important, what the priorities. Here's a situation we have where things are unknown. How do we deal with that? Okay. This is part of the job. Okay. And so you're producing content, you're writing, you're creating videos that you're putting on YouTube. You might be doing live streaming like this. I would say, by the way, don't worry, you don't have to start live streaming. Okay. You can definitely build up to that. You don't have to do any of these, actually, in particular. You don't have to live stream, but you will. But you do what you do, and through that doing of producing that content, you're leading people. You're giving people something to focus on. You're giving people um, direction, and you're advising them to think a certain way or believe certain things are true, or to focus on certain priorities. And you're saying you're going to benefit some people this way. Okay. So it's a shift, right? Can't just like hide behind your computer and write code. You have to go out in front and lead. At least figure, at least conceptually, you're doing that, right? So, and it does, it does require going out of your comfort zone. Okay? And that's part of why it gives you such an advantage when you do, because so many people are not willing to do it. Therefore, the more you do it, as you sustain it over time, in particular, it just builds kind of an exponential momentum for you. Okay. So what are the benefits to this? Well, if you go to look at the link for the white paper, there's many career benefits to this when you do this. And they come down to more money, you earn more, and you also have more freedom to do things that are interesting to you. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so I'll go ahead and let's see. We think about how we make money. How we make money as technology professionals. Almost all of us earn almost all of our money from working a full-time job. Okay. Meaning, so if you're in the USA, that means you're a W-2 employee of some company or organization, and different countries have different ways they classify it. But in most developed nations, there's some legal category where you are considered a part of the staff of a company, and the company has certain legal obligations, and you have certain rights, and you get earn a predictable income in exchange for the time you put in. Okay, so that's what's commonly that's how most people who work in technology earn most of their money. Okay. And when you become a thought leader, you enhance that revenue stream. Okay. In a number of ways. And you also create more revenue streams so that you can earn money outside of your job, but you can actually earn substantially more. Your job income, your salary, it can go up, but it's not going to go up by a factor of 10. Okay, there's a hard limit. The higher it goes up, the harder it is to keep it at that level and to increase it further. Okay, and so, but your non-wage, non-salary income as a technology thought leader, there's not really a limit to how high it can grow. You could theoretically earn $1 million a month with this. I'm not saying it's easy to get that, but it's easier to do than to raise your job salary that high. You can definitely, it's not that hard to, relatively speaking, all things considered, it's not that hard to get your non-wage income to even exceed your wage income. You have to do certain things you have not been doing. You have to go out of your comfort zone. You have to learn some new things, and you have to invest some time and continuity of it. But it's definitely very, very possible. Okay, but for right now, let's just talk about your main job, because in the short term, even as you start doing the thought leader activities, in the short term, your most or nearly all of your income will continue to come from the job you're working. Okay, so the job is, we want to increase our job security. Okay, it means we have a job, we want to keep it. We also want to make it so that we can get a new job easily if we need to. It's a very big challenge for a lot of people right now, as I'm recording this. And we want to be able to get a better job. Okay, what makes a job better? Well, a higher salary, higher annual income from the job. That's very probably the most important thing for most people, at least up to a certain point, right? And then another thing is quality of life while you're working in that job. Does this job give you work-life balance? Must you work 60 hours a week with people who are yelling at you in a high stress, high stakes kind of environment where you're not really given the resources you need to do well? That's not a great job, right? In contrast, what if you have a job where you work, ostensibly 40 hours a week, but in practice it's more like 30 to 35. It's pretty low stress. You're working with great people who you really like a lot, and they're really skilled, and they're skilled enough that you enjoy working with them, and you're learning from them, and they're learning from you. And it's just a great relationship with work. Everything about it is great. You're building your skills to position yourself for where technology is headed. You don't feel like, sometimes people have to accept jobs where they're working on some technology that's obsolete and heading downhill, right? You do what you have to do to pay the bills, but it's not optimal. We recognize that, right? But if we see something we're doing something where we're building work experience and a history with something we know is going to become increasingly important, that is, or we believe that, these are the kind of good jobs we have, right? As you develop these thought leader skills and put them into action, you start being able to do that more. Okay, you start being able to do this even more. You get better jobs, okay, and you get them more easily. As a statistical thing, that's what happens. Okay, why does this happen? Well, a number of reasons. One of them is that thought leadership activity expands your network. Okay, meaning your relation. I'm not talking about computer networking. I'm talking about creating relationships with other people, other humans. Okay, so let's talk about networking in that sense. Okay, so networking in this sense of interhuman relationships is something we all know we need to do. It's something we know that we want. It's kind of in the category where we need to do it more, but we don't necessarily love it. A lot of people work in technology are introverts. We want to spend more time working with the technology and less time working with people. There are people who are very good at human networking because they are extroverts and they work in some role where that's their job, like sales professionals is a good example, right? But that's not what we are. What we are is the kind of person who we know it's important to create our network, but the ways we know how to do it are not the activities we want to do, and it seems very time consuming. It seems very energy draining because we're introverts, not extroverts. Usually extroverts get energy by interacting with other people. With introverts, it's kind of the opposite. We get our energy and revitalized by kind of our alone time or with our small circle of people. Okay, um, so how do we increase our network, our business network, our professional network? Okay, and thought leadership activity has a lot of really expand your network with the if the ratio of how quickly expands your network divided by the energy you have to put in is better than anything else. Okay, so when you write a blog post and you publish it, okay, then people read it and you publish it in a way that they clearly know it's associated with you. Like you put it on a website that is like literally yourname.com or something. You have that and you publish it there, and you have that will prime people to in your profession to look at you with higher esteem. This increases your professional status. This elevates your professional status. It actually helps people perceive you as more skilled. Okay. So this can be a little bit challenging to accept because we have ideals about, well, um, I want people to look at my skills and base their sense of my professional status based on that. The thing is, nobody can do that unless they've worked with you a long time, right? We want to get a good first impression that makes people want to interact with us more, learn more about us. Okay, and so uh, we're publishing on our blog, and we're taking that, and we're maybe moving it or republishing it, rather propagating it on other channels for what as well. For example, you can write a blog post and then you can also copy paste that and publish it as a LinkedIn post. There's all sorts of ways you can horizontally transfer it. But there's a reason I say start with writing and writing blog posts. I can talk more about that later. But what we do is we write a blog post, someone reads it, and that person reads this and says, wow, okay, that's a good point. Or they think, okay, well, I know a lot about this topic, and because of this blog post I'm reading, I can tell the person who wrote it knows a lot about this too. Therefore, I'm going to take them more seriously if we interact, right? So that person is like now moved from, if you think of, if someone is in your human network, think of a spectrum from this person is like a professional, lifelong, someone I work with closely my entire career, all the way to I don't know who this person is. Think of that spectrum. Okay, when somebody reads a blog post and they learn something from it, or it validates what they know to be true, they move a little bit from here to here. Okay, they do move a little bit from here to here. And then when they read another blog post and it's the same, move from here to here. They start to respect you more. They start to look at you as someone who knows what they're doing, even though they haven't met you yet, right? So you're creating a positive first impression before you even meet the person, okay? And there's an amplification that can happen as well, because when that person who is an expert reads what you produce and they see the validity of it, they can share it with other experts and that propagates. Okay, so there's this mild viral effect that works in your favor. Okay, and so um, this is how it starts to create your network. And when you set it up right, so it's easy. Now, one way to do this is to make it completely anonymous, publish it on some website where there's no visible connection with you personally. That's, wasting an opportunity. Okay. Because you want them to, what's better is that you clearly publish it in a way that clearly associates with you as a technology professional. And what they do is they connect with, that you have a way for them to even interact with you and contact you, right? So on the blog page, you can have your email address. You can have, here's a link to connect with me on LinkedIn, for example. I have a YouTube channel. You don't have to have a YouTube channel, but if you did, you could link it there, right? All sorts of ways that you can leverage this. And so and then they connect with you now that they moved a little bit more into your network. Okay. All right. So, and then that's just how it starts. And then there's a factor here where you keep it going. You continue to do it. And what that does is it's going to create a momentum, basically. Okay. And you have to do it for a while before you start to see that. First, nobody knows who you are, but people will want to, in order to get emotionally invested in you, which is kind of what happens when somebody decides, oh, this is an authority. This person is someone I look up to as a fellow technology professional, or I look up to in my profession. They're not going to elevate you in status in their mind unless they think they will not regret that. Okay. And part of that equation in their decision to do that is, are you consistently producing? Are you someone who's going to stay around so they can, feel good about thinking of you in that way? That's part of the psychology of this. And so as they do that, they're going to start to feel kind of like they know you more. This builds over time. It's hard to do this with just one blog post or one video or something. But as you build this over time, this does continue. So that will start to create an audience for you. Okay. Now, when we say an audience, the audience is kind of specific, right? We're not looking for a mass market audience that, is something like, half of all adults are fans of us. That's not what we're doing. Okay. That's a different game. Something like Kim Kardashian or Mr. Beast. What they're doing is very different from what we're doing. Okay. That's more mass market entertainment. Okay. We're targeting an audience that is much smaller, that is much more sophisticated, that is much more valuable to us in building our career and making the most highest impact of what we're doing with our life as technology professionals. Okay. But you're starting to build this audience and they'll start to feel the get to know you. What's going to happen is you'll start getting people reaching out to you. You will start to find people talking about you a little bit. They'll start reaching out and wanting to, just finding an excuse to kind of interact with you. It's kind of interesting. This is a good sign. It means you're doing the right things. You're building things in the right direction. Okay. Remember, this builds in an exponential way. That means you're doing a constant amount of work, but the effect of that constant amount of work you're doing compounds and grows exponentially. It means you're doing a lot of work for a while. You're doing work steadily for a while, and nothing happens until suddenly it really does. Okay. That's really what happens. Okay. So that's why this is a long-term plan. It's a decision that this is the direction I'm going in my career. I'm not going to test the waters. Okay. You want to say, this is what I'm going to do. Because here's the thing. If you're working in technology, you're going to have to do things one way or another that you may not initially want to do, right? What's going to happen is that as you continue the process of creating content on a regular basis, then your life will get easier and better. Okay. As long as you continue it. Okay. As long as you keep it up. Now, if you don't do that, what's going to happen? Well, then you're trying to continue your career doing more traditional methods, and that can work out for you or it might not, but it's leaving a little more to luck. Basically, you're saying, oh, I'm just assume I'm going to be lucky, the economy will turn around, we're going to get more people, we're going to, all my skills will become more in demand. The thing is, you're always, as a technology thought leader, you're doing that anyway. You're adding something else. Okay. So in technology thought leadership, you're continuing to build your skills, learn new skills, deepen your expertise on what is important. And so it's not like an either or thing. Okay. Your balance of activity actually does not adjust that much either. Okay. So your accept it in your favor. Okay. One thing that can happen is that when that you can qualify for jobs where you just need to work less. Okay. And or rather, what happens is what's being removed is a lower value activity. Okay. So you're not really working less on the high value activity. Okay. Because think of somebody who's working 60 hours a week. Okay. Not a fun kind of place to be if that's your full time job and you just have to do it. Well, usually, not always, but typically, that not all those 60 hours of work are equal value. Okay. There's some portion of that where you're doing things that are really mission critical, and some portion of that time where what you're doing is things that need to be done but are not really making full use of your capabilities. That's the other that so that when that happens, what it's a little bit straining because you have to put in energy for all of this, but you're also if you can shift things so that you have a role where your time is more focused on the high value activities, and then you're not the one who has to do those lower value activities. Somebody else can do them. Okay. This is the kind of thing. How do you create that situation? Well, it helps if a lot of people in your industry think, wow, you are a very highly qualified technology professional. You're someone that we want on our team, and that will help you, get interviews, make it more likely that you're going to get a job offer from those interviews. And even just, if you double the amount of job offers you get, then you have choice just by simple statistics, you're going to get better offers, to choose from. Right. So, and why is that happening? Well, meaning, why are you getting more interview offers? Why are you getting more job offers from those interviews? Well, basically, your technology thought leadership activities are making it, look at it from the employer's perspective. Okay. From the perspective of the company who's hiring you, it's changing something. What it's changing from their perspective is that you seem like more of a sure thing. You seem like more of a guaranteed win. You seem like less of a risk, because when a company hires a new employee, they're taking a risk. Okay. They're spending more money than you might think, because it's not just your salary. There's a lot of taxes and fees. There's the cost to mentoring and onboarding you, which means if they have like 5 engineers and you come on as engineer number 6, there's some time that's going to be taken from those 5 engineers to just get you up and running. And that process can, it could be weeks or even months before you're adding to the output of the team, right? So if before you came on, that 5, they're performing at 100%. To onboard you, it could drop to like 95% or 90%, and then after some unknown number of weeks or months, then hopefully it gets back up to 100% and hopefully even more, right? If they're going from 5 to 6, that means they want to ideally get at least 100, get up to 120% productivity compared to where you were before, 6/5, right? 120%. But they don't know, right? Could go horribly south. Maybe you'll, be incompetent and delete the production database. They don't know, right? They don't know, but they can feel a lot more confident in it if you have a body of content of articles that you've written, maybe other things like videos that you've created, your GitHub repository. That's also can be considered a form of content, at least with regard to getting your career development. That lowers the risk. They think, wow, this person is more of a sure thing. Okay, this person is much more likely to work out, and that we'll be glad we invested the additional salary and payroll costs and diverting the time and energy of the existing team to onboard this person. So it's not 120%, now it's 130%, right? Another way that makes you a draw and makes you more attractive to employers is that they think, wow, if we bring on this person, they have this big audience of, or maybe it's not necessarily big, but it's relatively big as an audience of people in this industry who are really highly skilled. Okay. If we bring you on the team as this thought leader person, then we're going to add a lot of, it'll make it easier to attract more people like them, to recruit more people like them. Okay. And in fact, they can even ask you to tell your audience, hey, we're hiring, right? And that can be an additional source of income for you too. You could say to them, well, okay, if you're hiring, because here's the thing that sometimes happens is that, they can say, well, if we hire this person, they work out well. Okay. They have terms to kind of protect themselves, right? So an employer may say to you that, well, we want to hire a new engineer. We need a new engineer. And we say, if you refer an engineer and we hire them and we keep them on for 90 days and they are performing well, okay, then we will give you some bonus. And sometimes that bonus is like literally money they're giving you, okay? So think about this. You're on a team, you infiltrated this team, you got hired, and now you're one of 6 engineers. It's time to hire engineer number 7. You're the one who's been exercising your thought leader skills. You're the one who's been creating content and actually producing an audience, building up an audience. You can go to your audience and say, hey, I'm having a great time working on this team, doing this amazing problem. And we're working in this amazing problem space. It's fantastic. I love it. And I have some news. We're getting ready to hire another engineer. So this is not for everybody. Here's the requirements. If you're interested in applying and working with my team, then send me an email here, okay? And you give your email address or whatever way it is to contact you. You don't tell them to go to the employer. You tell them to go to you, and then you send an email to your boss introducing them, right? So that the employer knows it came from you, right? And so that becomes something that increases the value that you are giving to the organization that you're working for. It becomes more valuable to you. You're strengthening that professional relationship with everybody on that team. All sorts of good things can come out of this. Okay. All right. So there's a lot more to say about networking, human networking here. Just know that when you become a technology thought leader, it makes everything about that better and easier to build that network. And let me talk a little bit about what those words I just said, becoming a technology thought leader. That's a little bit misleading the way I worded it. Which, by the way, communication tip, you're always going to have wording in your content that is a little bit misleading, because basically the architecture of natural languages is not capable of never not being a little bit misleading. It's not really misleading, it's just incomplete. Okay. But so you learn how to deal with that better as you do it. And going back to the main idea. So when we say become a technology thought leader, the way that's misleading is that it kind of implies a binary. You're either a technology thought leader or you're not, right? It's either or kind of thing. And we can say, well, okay, we can generalize that to how much you are. Even that is not necessarily the most, that's certainly more truthful, more accurate, but even that is not the most helpful way to think about it necessarily. I think about it like this: technology thought leadership. It's not something you are; it's something you do. Okay, and you become a technology thought leader to the extent that you do the activities that make you that. Okay, and it's really, you can crank it up to whatever level you want. Okay, so you can take you start as a technology thought leader, or you make a decision you want to do this. Okay, well, what do? Well, you start by setting up your, you say, okay, I'm going to start by writing. I do encourage everybody to start this by writing blog articles. I can talk about why later, maybe another live stream, maybe later today. But what you're doing is you're creating, when you create this kind of content, you're starting to set things up so that you're sharing your wisdom, and you're developing and deepening your wisdom and knowledge, because that's what happens when you write about what you know. It actually forces you to fill in the blanks of what your knowledge is, and then it forces you to learn how to clearly articulate your understanding, and that becomes very, very valuable. It really will accelerate your skill development. So that helps. One thing that I think I worried about at first was, do I have the time to do this? Okay. Like, well, I want to put time into developing my technical skills and improving them. If I start taking time to write instead, do I have less time? Actually, no, it creates time. It really accelerates your skill development. So it actually will create more time, and you'll go further and faster as you improve your skills. So that's something to understand. That's very important. Okay. So as you do that, what you're doing, so many things concurrently, right? There's a lot of leverage in this, because it's doing many things all at once. Like I just explained, you're accelerating your development of your growth of your technical skills, your expansion of that, which we always need to be doing anyway. You're learning new skills of how to communicate more effectively, okay, through that channel, and overall too. That's something else. When you write a lot, it makes it so that you can communicate in conversation more effectively, and vice versa. So these things, all these different modalities of content creation, feed back on each other. It's really cool. And you're starting to set up so that people can discover your content, and then start to opt into your being in your audience. Okay. So these are the things that a thought leader does, and they just keep it up. And it's important to realize too that these are things that are course correcting. I want you to understand that you do not have to be deeply expert. You do not have to be high in your relative skill compared to others in your field. You just need to be average. In fact, the floor is lower than that. You can be within, if you're 20% below average, okay, if you think of, like, let's say you're a software engineer, okay, this applies to anybody who works in technology, but just use that as an example. Okay, you're like, okay, some software engineers, they're better than me. They can write better code faster. They can solve problems in building software systems I don't know how to solve yet. Okay, some software engineers are worse than me. I could tell that, they're like, they can't figure things out that I figured out a long time ago. So you kind of put yourself in this, comparison order. Okay. My recommendation is you don't even mess with that. Don't even think about it. Okay. Even if you're well below average right now in your skill level and your capability, some things, right? Start writing about those. Okay. You can start writing, like maybe, again, software engineer. What's something that a software engineer does? Well, they write automated tests. Okay. And you've been learning about that and you got the basics down. Start writing about those basics. Okay. There are advanced techniques of, writing automated tests. Maybe you don't know about those yet. Don't worry. Don't write about those. Write about what you know. And then as you're writing about them, you'll start to connect dots, and your wisdom and your understanding and your expertise in this area will increase just from writing about it. That is what is so cool about this process, right? So you start doing that, and as you're writing, you get other ideas for things to write about. Okay, that naturally happens. What I do is I keep a list. Actually use a text file on my computer. It's called ideas.txt. And as I'm writing an article, I think of an idea for this other article and then another idea. It's like, okay, I start writing a paragraph and I realize, wow, this thing's becoming a really long paragraph. I don't need to cover this in this article at all. I'm just going to take it out, put it in my ideas file, and that becomes the seed for a different article. Okay. These are all things that happen. You just need to make the decision to do it. You just do it. Okay. It comes down to this: technology thought leadership is not something you are, it's something you do. And you start right now, no matter where you are. If you're listening to this, then you're interested in technology, you're working in technology, you're about to start working on it, you're working towards it. You just start doing these things. Okay. Even, really I'm mainly orienting everything towards people who are already working in technology. But even if you're not yet and you're just early in the learning stages, nothing's stopping you from doing all this, right? You're learning to write the Hello World program, write an article about that, right? That you can start, and that's good to do, because even though it's not necessarily showing that you're above average, okay, in what you're communicating, the great thing is you're practicing these non-technical skills of technology thought leadership, and it will accelerate how quickly you learn, how quickly you get up there. This is something that you want to start doing as soon as possible. You want to start doing it today. Okay. All right. So I'm going to end this live stream here. And if you're watching the recording, post a comment telling me what you would like me to talk about in the next live stream. Okay. See you.